WVLP.org or on your TuneIn app. We are broadcasting live from the historic 1 Center Street building in beautiful Valparaiso, Indiana. The Bill and Callie Show is underwritten by Bill Moran and Callie Rosella. Now, here are Bill and Callie.
Good morning and welcome to the Bill
and Callie
Show. We're here today with our guest Lance Bella, who is the director of the Porter County Emergency Management Agency. Did I get all that right?
You did.
Oh, awesome. So
yeah,
it is. It is. The Bill and Kelly Show covers everything in the area, the events and people and businesses in the Chicago area and beyond. So we're here today to talk about what's going on in Porter County's Emergency Management Agency and trying to give you some helpful tips as we roll into this god-awful thing we call winter. Gosh, I don't want to think about it.
No.
I don't want to think about it.
I love fall. I just hate what follows.
So, Lance, well, welcome again.
Yes.
You're no
So
stranger
happy.
to this show. We try to have you on at least once a month, maybe every other month, but whenever we can, because you're better looking than me, so I always try to attract the female listeners and watchers. So let's start out talking about some of the things that are coming up. We've got a tornado siren test coming up in, you want to tell us about that?
Yeah, actually, the
Hold on just a second. Go ahead.
The sirens are tested the first Tuesday of every month at right around 11 o'clock a.m. So those are an automatic test that goes out. And what we've been doing, in the past, you've just heard the tornado siren. And recently, we've changed that to where it will test the tornado siren for part of the time and then go into like an air raid siren the second part, because we want to test both of those systems. And so that test will go on again the first Tuesday of every month. The only time that may not happen is if it looks like the weather's really bad that day and we don't want to get a false reading where if we actually did have a tornado. But what we will do is put out a notice on our Facebook page saying we are not testing the sirens today. So if you hear one, it's the real thing. So it's good to follow us on Facebook because you can get those notifications as well. The other thing is, in the past, we would have people call in from each area to let us know that their siren actually worked. The sirens have been upgraded over the years, and so they're all on computer systems. So now we get reports at least twice a day from self-tests within the sirens, and then also when we activate them for the monthly test, we know if they worked or not. So we're okay with people calling us, but just so the listeners know, we no longer need all the areas to call us to let us know if the siren was working or not. If you see something wrong with the siren or see something damaged, yes, certainly call us, though, because we do want to take care of it right away.
Okay, so typically, though, the computer's going to tell you if it's not working.
It will.
But if by chance, if they see some damage going by, maybe during wind damage, one of the horns is hanging, please
Sure.
call.
Yeah,
So,
absolutely.
Because that's a very important piece of our warning system in the county. And so it's used during weather emergencies and also in case there's some other type of natural or unnatural disaster.
Yes.
So
And those are triggered. They're triggered automatically by the National Weather Service. So they're tied into the National Weather Service. If there was a tornado or a warning, they could be triggered automatically by them. They can be manually triggered by the 911 center if somebody had a visual sighting, a confirmed visual sighting of a threat, and or we can activate them from Porter County Emergency Management. So there's actually 3 ways. The primary way is going to be automatically triggered by the National Weather Service, though.
Right. And also, it used to be, and I don't know if this is true anymore, the tie-in with the weather radios. It used to be that every time there was a emergency weather, particularly in Porter County, it would not only activate the siren system, but also the weather radio system.
Yeah, in fact, depending on what weather radio you have, I have one that's tied into it's from the National Weather Service, actually. Yeah, it would be simultaneous. A lot of times you'll hear that go off, then you'll hear the sirens about the same time. And I highly recommend those for anybody's home. The one I have is it plugs into an outlet, but then it's a battery backup, but it's tied in, as I said, to the National Weather Service. We had the storm about a week or two ago. And again, I heard we weren't in a tornado situation, but my weather radio went off and let us know that something was inbound. I happened to look out the window and it was black outside.
Severe thunderstorm
So
or
yeah, we
something
pulled the
with
cars in, went down into
damage,
the
right.
basement just as a precaution. So one of the things I always talk about is having layers of protection. So, you know, the sirens are good, but also have other layers of protection in your house that can alert you. So you have your cell phones now that can tie into that stuff, have a weather radio, so that way whatever means you're near, you'll hopefully hear it.
Right.
So
Right. And you want to make sure that you've got a weather that's NOAA approved.
Exactly.
Which is the National Weather Service. And used to be you had to select channels now, but I think it's all automatic in the
Yeah.
area you're in. If I
in fact, the one I have, it's all digital when I set it up, and they're really not that expensive. You said what state, what county, and then it tied everything in for you.
Right.
So really nice.
Yep. So we have another test coming up here, the Emergency Alert System test.
Yeah, and that's going to be a national test. It's going to be at 1:18 Central Time today, and what they are going to do is activate everybody that's tied into weather services. What most cell phones, I shouldn't say everybody, most cell phones will get activated, and any other means that you're tied into are going to get activated at 1:18 today. So it's a national test of that system. So it will come across and say this is just a test. But as your phone goes off at 1:18 today, just know that
Now that's 1:18 Central Time?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Yeah, so that's, it'll say it's a test, so read it, obviously. But just so we're letting everybody know, so nobody panics when, everything alarms at 1:18
Right.
today, Central Time, so.
So in case you're out there and wondering what the alarms are going off, you're getting first word here from Lance Bella that there at 1:18 a.m. There will be an emergency alert system.
1:18 p.m.
PM,
today.
1:18 p.m. today, there
Yes.
will be an emergency test. Gosh, we are talking about winter. Man, I wish we could just bypass this stuff. But we do have winter coming up on us. And so can you talk to us a little bit about what people can do in the area to get ready, their vehicles and things of that nature to remain safe?
Yeah, and then unfortunately, it's the time to talk about it, and because I'm like you, Bill, I think every year if winter was just a month or two, it'd be all right, but it's
Yeah.
not here. So,
And you need to be proactive, not
We do.
reactive. That's the thing.
and typically what happens, because we all procrastinate, we wait to the first really big snow, and then we say, oh gosh, I should do this and that and have this in my car. And so this is the time to think about it, because as we know, in November, we could have snow. So let's get ready now, ahead of time. So the thing is, what do we need to do? And so some of that is making sure that our homes are ready, making sure that our cars are ready, and we're prepared. So talk about cars for a second. So it's a good time if you haven't tuned your car up or had it serviced, maybe have it serviced, because again, in the middle of a snowstorm, we don't want to find out that our car's not starting or we're having problems with it. We don't want to be broke down anytime, but when it's 30 below zero, not a good time. So making sure that's tuned up, check the battery, again, because usually we find out during winter that our battery's going bad and then we have problems. So get it looked at now and just make sure that you're good. And then and if you don't already, start keeping your vehicle full of gas if you can, because you just never know what's going to happen. And sometimes in the summer, we tend to maybe let it run a little bit lower, but in winter, it can be really, really critical, because not only do we count on that gasoline to get us places, but also if we get stuck somewhere, we want to make sure that our car can provide heat to us. So, we may have to, if we get stuck, we may have to run the vehicle to keep ourselves warmed up. So making sure that all those things are ready, and then I always like to talk to people about what should you have in your vehicle. And so I'll tell you a quick story about that, which kind of leads into this. Probably 15 years ago, we when I still worked for U.S. Steel, we had it was in, I believe, early April. We had a really bad snowstorm. So we said, well, who's the non-essential personnel? Who don't we need here? And so we sent the office staff home. We said, look, you don't need to be here. We're going to keep emergency people here. You guys all go home. There's no sense putting you in danger here. Well, it got so bad so quick that our secretary, who was on the way home on the Indiana toll road, the state police had to shut the toll road down with everybody on it because it became so hazardous so fast that nobody could drive on it. She spent the night in her car on the toll road. So, thank God she had blankets and things in her car. But that just begs the question that anytime something can happen to you, and so especially in winter, you want to have what I call a go bag in your car. And I keep that in my car, and I actually keep it in my trunk, but accessible that I can fold the back seat down without getting out of the car and grab it. So I keep it right in front of that panel. But what do you have in it? So some obvious things: hat, gloves. Because you never know. You may forget them that day, but you actually have an extra set of hat, gloves. Maybe some socks in there because you may be dressed up. You may have some very thin socks on, or maybe your socks get wet. So you need to be able to change into some warm socks. Have a blanket. So there's the regular roll-up blankets. Or there's also, it almost looks like a sleeping bag, but it looks almost like tin foil. It's a real thin plastic, but you can actually get into that, and what it does is it reflects the heat back. And it's a very small package. It almost looks like a little plastic rain poncho, so it doesn't take up a lot of space. So I have one of those in my bag. Chemical hand warmers are good. So I have about 4 to 6 of those. Again, a plastic package that when you squeeze and break, chemicals mixed and it gets warm. They have some that last 2 hours. You can get them to last up to 8 hours. So again, that's a source of heat that you don't have to necessarily have the car running. If you get caught in your car all night, have to spend the night, you can have those in your pockets, put them down in your shoes, and try to stay warm. Those are good. Flashlight, obviously. But again, checking the battery. So if you have a flashlight in your car, make sure you're checking those batteries now. You don't want to find out that you don't have those. And now with the new LED bulbs, where maybe a flashlight might last a couple hours, you get a lot more time out of them. So make sure if you haven't gotten one, get an LED flashlight or lantern. Those really last a lot longer. So that would be a source of light if you had to look at something specific. But another thing that I like to have in that bag are those chemicals, chem sticks they call them. So it's a plastic stick, you break it, chemicals mix, and it glows. So what do you need that for? You obviously don't want to have your flashlight or lantern on the whole time, so you can actually snap one of those sticks and hang it from the rear view mirror. If it's really dark out, it provides a source of light, and you're not using up the batteries from your flashlight or your lantern, so it's just a nice alternate. Some food, so non-perishable food. So it could be snack bars or something, but when you get cold, you shiver, and you burn a lot of calories when you shiver. So your body needs to be able to replenish that in order to be able to keep itself warm. So you need food and hopefully water. Obviously in the winter, you got to be careful because it could freeze. So that's something you got to kind of deal with. Water, I may keep it in the cab of the car where at least it's getting thawed out somewhat because you're getting to room temperature.
Or vodka because it doesn't
There
freeze,
you go.
right?
There you go.
So gosh, Kelly keeps forgetting we don't have a cough button on our system here. Yeah.
Well, I'm just thinking of things
That
that
was on
don't
the
freeze that I
3 second
enjoy,
So-
drinking.
Yeah.
So maybe some boots. So you may be dressed up, like we said. Maybe you're in a suit and you're going somewhere, so you have dress shoes on. You don't really want to traipse through 3 foot of snow with dress shoes on. I've tried it and it doesn't work good. So some boots. So just some things like that you can have in your car. Again, you never know when you get stuck or if you may get stuck. You want to keep the car on full. You usually burn about a gallon of gas every half an hour to 45 minutes with your car idling. So again, thinking that, if you want to run your car, you may not run it the whole time, but you may start it, get it warm, shut it back off. But the worst thing would be to be on a quarter tank or empty, and now you can't even start your car up. The other thing, you want to avoid getting out of your car if you can. But if you were stuck, you want to ensure that snow is not up over the tailpipe, because if you're running your car and that tailpipe's obstructed, carbon monoxide will back up into your car and you can poison yourself. So,
Right.
What about going potty? I mean, are
Yeah.
there things that you can keep in the car that are,
Absolutely. I mean, it's a great question. I mean, some people keep a 5-gallon bucket and some bags, so with a lid. But yeah, I mean, those are those unpleasant
I mean, if I'm
things you
spending
don't
the
want to
night
think
on
about.
a toll road,
Yeah.
chances are pretty good. I'm going to need to go potty sometime.
Some toilet paper, so you
Yeah.
never know.
Well, one of the things that you can avoid is if you know there are inclement conditions, particularly in Porter County. There are a lot of rural roads in Porter County that close first when we have a snow drift, and that's one of the other things that I know Porter County plays a major role, particularly with the schools, is going ahead of, the plow drivers will get road reports ahead of before bus drivers go out. But, if there is a weather emergency, you shouldn't be out. Specifically, if you have a Toyota Prius, or as we refer to it as the Hello Kitty car,
It's a C, Prius C.
Prius C. Yeah, either way, you shouldn't be out. Even if you have a big manly Jeep, you probably, if they declare a weather emergency, it's for a particular reason. They want to make sure that the ways are clear for emergency vehicles to get through to homes that may have people that need help. So that's something else you want to talk about, because we get a number of people stranded out on those county roads, and it causes a problem because
Sure.
emergency responders have to then respond to those people.
No, it's a good point, and several things. So if you follow our Facebook page, sounds like a Facebook commercial, but we post road reports for the unincorporated roads of Porter County. So we get that information directly from the highway department, and then those get posted to our Facebook page. So if you want to know what the conditions of the unincorporated roads are as they get bad, those reports will be fed to our Facebook page. So that's a really good source to know what are those conditions. And then if we were to declare an emergency, as Bill said, that would get posted as well. So that's just one source of getting that information. But as Bill said, in the event of a true emergency, we do ask people at that time, and it'll be put out, to possibly stay off the roads. And having done that job as an emergency responder, you find yourself having to rescue people that don't need to be out when you really need to get to people who are maybe having a heart attack in a home or some other type of emergency. So you're interjecting yourself into an equation and complicating an already bad situation. So again, there's times that people do have to be out because of an emergency situation, but if you don't have to be out, you want to try to stay off the road if possible. So.
Now, what do you think, I'm sorry, what do you think is the best thing for somebody to keep in their car for chances like they get skidding off the road, they get stuck, to get traction? I know some people keep kitty litter and
Yeah.
different things in their car, but I mean, what is a good thing?
Well, I mean, there's kitty litter, sand is good. Some people I know keep a bag of salt back there. So the salt adds the weight to the vehicle, but then at the same time, you can open that up and put it to try to melt some of the snow under the tires. So those are good. If you got stuck, I've been successful at times. The floor mat sometimes can help. It depends how much snow or ice you have under your wheel.
Right.
Sometimes that can get you some traction too. I do recommend, there's some flashlights that are really good that actually have beacons built into them that you could stick with magnets onto your car, that if you're broke down, obviously, or if there's an issue, you're stuck, there's a lot of snow, maybe people can't see you. So you want that beacon so that people can see you, so they don't run into you and injure you or themselves as well. So something like that
Right.
would be good as well.
Particularly
And
plow drivers, because
Exactly.
particularly in very inclement conditions, they sit up high, but I mean, if you're buried in snow to begin with, then that's a big vehicle coming down, because
Sure.
Porter County has some of the biggest plows I've ever seen.
Yeah.
So, just a comical note aside, I remember about 8 years ago when we had that weather emergency. In fact, it was the first year I had my Jeep, actually. The Berkey family, where they were going along rescuing people, and the Berkeys who own the farm and the restaurant and all. And I thought, wow, probably it's the time to get rescued by the Berkeys. You go in and get some pulled pork and some nice pies, but not a good reason to go out. But I was thinking for a while, gosh, a nice pie.
Weighing your options.
Weighing your options.
I know one of the
So-
things I do too is I carry a portable charger for my cell phone.
Yes.
Yeah.
And that's
Yes.
always, I think, a good idea to have.
That now they have those battery packs that are pre-charged, or you can have in your your USB port or even your lighter in your vehicle that are charged. So again, now as your cell phone starts to get low, you have that as a secondary.
Right. Extra power
Somebody keep your
source.
cell phone going to call for emergency. Now, this bags you described, some companies actually put these together as well, so they can go out and search for these, but they may not have everything that you described in.
Yeah, I mean, and there are some really good ones. If you Google that, Go Bags, there's different ones that are for medical, some for, cold weather. You can look. I made my own, but yeah, there's some that are already made up. And there's a myriad of items. I mean, there's more than I even described that you can have in those. And over time, I add a little bit here and there to those bags. But again, this is a good time if you have one. Get it out, check it, make sure the batteries are good and things. The snacks aren't stale. Maybe you switch them out once a year at least. If you obviously want non-perishable food. So if you have a can of chili in there, make sure you get a can opener or something to heat that up with.
So one of the thing that probably want to caution people too is the day of the flares are pretty much gone, right? There is safety.
You got to be careful. I'm not saying flares are necessarily bad, but you got to be very careful. You could create another problem by starting something else on fire, or if you have some type of a fuel leak, you're interjecting that in the equation. There's some really nice products right now. They almost look like little hockey pucks with LEDs in them that you can push a button and they're really bright, and you can lay them out on the road in place of those, so they're safer. And you don't have something flammable in the trunk of your car,
Right.
So
And really, with the LED technology we have today, we have brighter, it emits more lumens, the rating, than a flare does, and they're safer, and they last longer.
Yes,
So
yes.
that's the nice thing. But you do have to check them periodically. The batteries, specifically if they're staying dormant for a long period of time, you want to check your batteries as winter runs along.
Probably keep a couple of packs of extra batteries in
I
the
do,
back of my car
yeah.
too.
And once a
And-
year, whether you think you need them or not, get new batteries
ones,
in there.
yeah.
Yeah, and
Just-
keep the batteries actually inside till you go, because cold will depreciate the batteries as well. So that is, yeah. And that's one of the beauties we have from living in the Midwest, particularly the Chicago area and the lakefront. I remember my dad always brought me up, you would never go anywhere without a shovel in your car. And I've been laxed about that lately.
They have those cool
So-
little shovels too that the
Yeah.
handles fold down and everything.
Sure.
that
Yeah,
make
the
it-
Army shovels.
Yeah,
So-
those are
All
great.
kinds of good stuff.
So is there anything else about, as we're coming up on winter, do you want to advise people maybe in their home, because we're running in some winters lately that we get trapped in homes and
Yeah.
that type of thing.
Yeah, just making sure you have supplies. Obviously, food we think about, but your generators. If you have a generator for your house, checking that out now, getting it tuned up if you need to. Does it have fuel? Depending on what your fuel source is, there's all kinds of different generators: natural gas, piped. There's diesel. There's gasoline. But let's talk about gasoline or fuel driven like that generators. If you have a generator like that, and we hear about it every winter, somebody fires up their generator because their power is out. Maybe it's a gasoline powered generator or diesel. They put it in their garage and they fire it up, and now you have carbon monoxide that builds up in the garage. And if they shut the garage door, which every year ends up happening, now that carbon monoxide can get into your house. So you want to make sure that that generator is ventilated such that you're not creating a secondary hazard into your home, where carbon monoxide, you can't smell it, you can't see it, but it's a deadly gas, and a lot of people die every year because of that. So
Would you say if you had the option, of course, there's some people live in an area where you don't have natural gas and they still require propane, but wouldn't it be better to look at a natural gas generator if you have that option?
I like the natural gas pipe generators. I think those are a really good method. Obviously, it's not the only method here, but if you can have that, I think it's a good option. One of the things with natural gas is depending on what you want to power in your house. Do you just want to power part of it or the entire house? And that sometimes depends on the volume of gas you have coming into your house. So you may find that if you want to power your whole house, and an expert can tell you whether you have enough volume, you may have to have a larger gas pipe installed in order to accommodate that. Our neighbor has a natural gas generator, but she's only powering part of her house, so she was able to do that with just her supply that she has now.
Right. And you have to weigh, because a lot of those generators with the wattage rating, it's getting pretty steep out there. So you have to weigh, what do you want to have running during a weather storm or weather
Sure.
emergency, or a prolonged period where there's a weather or a power outage after an electrical storm or something of that nature.
Right.
So you have to sit down there and prioritize, because to get a generator will power your whole house, you're going to be looking at some substantial bucks, gas line or not.
Yeah, it could be. I mean, it depends what generator, but you could be talking $2,000, $3,000, $4,000 easy on a
Right.
generator. But again, it depends on what type. But then also, with the new LED light bulbs that you can put in your house, that helps eliminate some of the wattage that you'd need on that. But obviously, large appliances, your refrigerators, your freezers, your furnace, that's going to take more.
Right.
And but those are some of the things that you want to keep going if you have a
Right.
power outage.
Yeah, prolonged particularly. And keep in mind that most refrigerators, I think, will keep, if you keep them closed and not keep them open, they will keep your food cool for about 12 hours, I believe.
Yeah, the important thing is if you don't need to open it, don't open it if you got a power outage.
Right, right. So anything else at home that you can advise people about that?
I could spend 3 hours, Bill.
Oh, yeah, I know. I was going to say, there's so many things.
Well, we're coming up on a break here, but when we start talking about the volunteers, because that's one thing that it is important for people to know, that a lot of your manpower comes from volunteers in the agency. So let's talk about those. How many do you have, and,
Okay.
and what do they do?
Good. Well, our regular staff, regular Porter County employees, we have 4 in Porter County Emergency Management. But we also have, as Bill said, volunteers that donate a lot of time to help out the county. And there's 18 volunteers presently at Porter County Emergency Management that perform a variety of functions in order to help the citizens of Porter County. And their services are invaluable to what we do. And they are constantly contributing to the safety of the citizens. And a lot of people may not realize that, so I think it's important to point that out.
Yeah, so, yeah, and one of the things, too, I think that's important to know, a lot of these people, when they see a need, when you're volunteers, they just say, I'm going to go out and get it and just make it work, because they're citizens of the county. So, speak to that. I mean, they've got some great guys working for you that volunteer. And
We do. And I like to say that, the heart of a volunteer is golden, because people have other things that they can do. They have regular jobs, they spend all day at their jobs, and then when they're in their free time, instead of maybe doing things that might be considered even more fun, they're out working, helping us, responding to emergencies. We can go through in a minute some of the things they do, but it's not always the most glamorous. It's not always, you may be standing in the cold for 6 hours helping on an emergency scene, but these people donate their time for free to help Porter County out of the goodness of their heart. And our volunteers donate in excess of 1,000 hours a year to the county just to help out and help do things. So, some of the things that they do, obviously they help respond to emergency situations. So if police, fire, EMS, or the like call and they need additional resources, they will call us and we will help provide those, set those up. An example, we're talking about cold weather. If there was a large fire, the fire department may call us. We have a climate-controlled trailer that we can bring out. This happened last winter where there was a structure fire. It was probably 20 below wind chill factor outside. The firefighters are fighting this fire. We needed a place to warm them up so they could come warm back up before they went back out into the fire, maybe get something to eat, something to drink, and go back out. So we brought this trailer, we get the heaters going, get it climate control for them so that they can have that place to go. But again, in the meantime, once we set all that up, we're getting firefighters in and out. Our volunteers are standing out in the cold or sitting in a vehicle for 4-6 hours sometimes just trying to help. And so again, that's the stuff that happens behind the scenes that probably very few people recognize or see or thank them for, but they're out there all the time doing things like that. And again, they're not always the glamorous jobs, but they're really, really important jobs.
Well, we'll come back to that because one thing we have to do, or we may have to declare an emergency on up in here, is do our station break. So with that, we'll be back with you in about a minute.
You are listening to The Bill and Callie Show on WVLP LP 103.1 FM and streaming live at WVLP.org or on your TuneIn app. We are broadcasting live from the historic 1 Center Street building in beautiful Valparaiso, Indiana. The Bill and Callie Show is underwritten by Bill Moran and Callie Rosala. Now, here are your hosts, Bill and Callie.
Welcome back. So we were talking about the volunteers, which I think, Lance, we've talked much. You're kind of blessed to have that group that you have. Some have been there quite some time. Some are just so. And one of the things that it is important to know is, even though Porter County is looked at as the county with rural areas, you still have some large manufacturing facilities in the area that if, God forbid, something happened, your unit has to go out and help, whether it be provide shelter or backup assistance to emergency responders. Ameriplex, Urshel Labs, and some
Steel mills.
Steel mills, yeah. We've got them here, right here in Porter County. So talk about like a typical, say if there is an explosion at one of these facilities, what is your part in that? The emergency services?
Well, it's going to depend on what the emergency responders need. So they may call us, as we just talked about, for the climate control trailer, which can be air conditioned or heated. We have a large command vehicle that we can bring out that whoever the incident commander is can run the scene from. So if it's going to be a long scene, where they need additional resources, computers, maybe some camera systems and things like that, we would bring that command vehicle out, set it up for them, and get them going there. Generators, so we have more than one generator that can supply power. Maybe they need that for scene lighting. Maybe there's a building that is critical that does not have power because of whatever has happened. Depending on what the requirements for that building would be, we can hook up generators in order to help supplement power in order to do that. I mentioned lights, scene lights. We have scene lights that if they need additional lighting, we can set up. Say we have emergency responders that are out there on scene for a long time, they need food and they don't have any. We help find that food and get that out to them. So it may not necessarily always be something that we even have, but we know somebody who can help get it to the emergency responders. And so we will make those calls in order to help get them through the event so that they can concentrate on what they need to be doing. So again, a lot of different things, but in order to do all those things, these volunteers have to train. So, to set up this equipment, it's not something you just walk in and intuitively know. So they spend a lot of time training and meeting. We have the first Wednesday of every month, we have a general meeting for the volunteers. There's a work night that's on another Wednesday that they will come in. And these meetings or work nights could be an hour to 3-4 hours, depending on what we're doing. But again, they're coming in and donating their time. And then trainings and other things that we do throughout the month, they're donating all of that time. In addition to that, we have people that just come into the building and say, what do you need done? Whether it's running an electrical outlet or servicing equipment, or doing other things, writing procedures, they're willing to do that. And again, they spend a lot of time helping us and helping the citizens of Porter County.
Now, in order to be a volunteer, do you have to have a special skill set, or can anybody come in and learn some of these things that you need?
Yeah, that's a good question. You don't necessarily have to have all the skills ahead of time. There's some basic National Incident Management classes that can be taken online. We call them NIMS classes, that give them a basic knowledge of some of the things we do. but obviously we would train them in a lot of that. So we have a lot of volunteers that are specialists in different things, but you don't necessarily have to be a specialist coming
Okay,
in.
so if somebody just out there says, I'd really like to get involved with this, that's something you can do.
Yeah, and as long as they're willing to train, we'll help them in that avenue. So it's a really good question. We were talking even before the show that, when you hear volunteer, you may think, okay, they're washing cars or something, and there would be nothing wrong with that. But we have a lot of our volunteers, if not most of them, are specialists in an area, and they've learned to apply whatever specialty they have to what we do. We have communication specialists that do that for a living, that come in and can program radios. And I mean, these people are amazing. And a lot of times I'll tell them what I want to accomplish, and they just go figure out how to make it happen. And, the electronic geniuses, I call them, we have people that do that. We have people that work from the mental health profession that help us, all kinds of different specialties, transportation specialists, but they not only apply their skills to what we do, but then they're willing to do any job. And what we try to say is, look, we're not going to just pigeonhole somebody into one spot. We all want to be able to do it all, but then obviously we'll all have our own little specialties as well. But these people all contribute to that. And many times we're on scenes, and obviously we are budgeted for certain things, but there's always things in emergencies that come up that you can't account for. And I've watched some of our volunteers. We've been on search and rescues, assisting where somebody needs ice or food, where they'll actually go without even being told and buy things out of their own pocket. And contribute it to the county. So there's a lot of things, again, that happen behind the scenes that I'd like to at least recognize, because I see it, because I'm there every day, but a lot of people don't even know about. And this is all contributing to the overall safety of the county and the people who respond to emergencies. But these people are doing it behind the scenes.
Now, is there a discretionary fund set up for things like that? Or if somebody wanted to donate, so that in case somebody does need to go out and buy ice or go out and buy food or whatever, that money is there, that you don't have to worry about accounting to the county?
Yeah, there is. I mean, obviously we have some funds for training and different things, but there's always things that pop up. So there is an account set up for donations through the county. And if somebody did want to contribute or do a donation to Porter County Emergency Management, they could do so. They could send a check to Porter County Emergency Management that's made out to Porter County government. And then what I always tell people in the notes section, just say donation to Porter County EMA. But you could send it to us at 1995 State Road 2, Valparaiso, Indiana, 46385. So they could mail it. And then once we receive it, that would go to the auditor and clerk's office, and that would be checked in, and then it would go into that donation fund. And then depending on what we would need it for, maybe it's training, maybe it's equipment, maybe it's uniforms, or ice, as we said.
Or whatever.
We could use those funds in order to help the county. So it would truly be going to help the county and then help support, again, these volunteers that donate their time to help all of us.
That's great.
Yeah, one thing that I think I want to bring up, Lance, is that we are in Porter County, and we're no longer Porter County residents, but we think the people of Porter County ought to be blessed, because there are some really good people working in charge. We think of Mike Brickner, who has got years as not only police officer, but the police chief at Valparaiso Department 4. He was hired on as the director of 911 services in Porter County. Then we have yourself, who has had well over 31 years of experience in safety, working for a fairly large company, U.S. Steel. So one thing that we should all feel comforted in is that we have some people who are extremely trained and experienced at providing emergency services and keeping us all safe in Porter County. So thanks again for all your work and everything you do.
Appreciate it.
And one thing that we go on extend, and it may be an outreach of emergency services or not, but it's in front of everyone's mind daily, unfortunately. And we just had, the Vegas shooting.
The 1 year anniversary.
The 1 year anniversary of the Vegas shooting. which dovetails into school shootings. Can we talk about like school safety and event safety as well?
Sure.
And if you could step us through just your years of experience and talk about some of those things that you with your years of experience
I mean,
can help
even
folks
simple
out
little
with.
active shooter thing, just like at
Right.
the Walmart the other day. I mean,
Yeah.
Sure.
there you go.
Yeah, it's sad that we have to talk about these things, but it is important, and ignoring or not talking about it doesn't make it go away.
Right.
So as I talk to people, again, you don't want to just dwell on the negative, but we have to realize that is something that we have to face or could possibly face, and it can happen anywhere, as Bill said before. So, how do we prepare for that? And some of that's training. Some of that is looking at our buildings and trying to harden them, as we say, whether it's through access control camera systems. There's no one method that's going to prevent everything from happening. So, again, I always like to preach that have layers of protection, because maybe we protect the perimeter of our property. Well, what if somebody gets past that? Okay, how do we keep people, or how do we detect people on our property that don't belong there? How do we keep them from getting in their building? If they get in the building, how do we limit where they can go? And then there's all those physical things that we talk about that are all important. And then getting into employee and citizen training. So obviously the police and emergency responders train extensively in what they need to do, and they're very capable and knowledgeable about what their actions would be if something were to happen. But I really want to stress that citizens all over need to train on what is their part and what are their roles, because there's a lot of things they can do. Obviously, there's nothing that we can say that it's 100% guarantee if you train that you're going to make it through that type of a situation, but you can greatly increase your chances of survival by training. And again, it doesn't necessarily have to be hand-to-hand combat, but it's knowing if something was to happen, and we've talked about it in here before, where are your exits? Where would you go? Where could you go to lock yourself down? And a lot of times people don't think about that until the situation is unfolding before them, and that's too late to be thinking about that. So part of that training is, as you walk into a room, looking at a room, reading it, where are the exits? I know I just walked in this door. How else could I get out? If I needed to, go somewhere for a safe place within the building, where would I go? And looking at buildings, anywhere you go, whether it's a restaurant, an office building, somewhere you frequent often or don't come to very often, being able to just kind of look at that and at least not be paranoid, but think about it, that if something were to happen, what would I do? Where would I go? That's part of it. And then, again, if God forbid it does happen, what are my options? And we were talking before the show, you have the run, hide, fight methodology, which I think is a great tool. So obviously run, if you can get out, get out. If you can't, hide. And where are you going to hide? And there's places that are better than others to hide. What kind of protection is it providing? And sometimes those options could be limited. But, does the door lock? Which way does the door swing? Why is that important? What would I barricade with? There's a lot of things like that. And then the last part of that is as a final alternative, if I had to fight, what would I do? And knowing things that can give you an advantage on a shooter. What are things that could surprise a shooter? What are things that you can do? Again, not getting into the hand-to-hand combat part, but there's a lot of things that mentally you can take advantage of a shooter or expose their weaknesses. Again, is always the last resort, but again, it may come to that. And as you've seen across America, there's a lot of active shooter events that are stopped by normal everyday citizens because the police, there's a lot of damage that can happen before police get there. And the police response times are low, so that's not a knock to the police department. But if somebody with an automatic weapon can do a lot of damage in the first 2 or 3 minutes of an event.
Right. And it's something that we all sit back and think, no, it's not going to happen. Well, we've proven that it has happened. We've had it here in Maryville just not too long ago. And, I think a lot of people are thinking when they go into stores what they would do. And again, if you go through those with, again, the first one, run. Second one is hide. And then the last resort, if you're faced with that individual, you really don't have an option. You have to figure out what to do to survive, and that is locate a fire extinguisher, whatever it takes. Just think through what object you can do, because at that point you don't have an alternative.
Yeah.
But always run and seek shelter, and then if by chance you come in contact with that person, then try to find a weapon or something that can disarm them. And that's something that we do here in Porter County too. There a number of churches have had their Valpo Police Department, I know, has put on a lot of safety trainings and so on. So now, what about now? I know you guys have to deal with these large companies and schools. I know in the schools we have the one county, one protocol, which Dave Reynolds has been on many a time talking about that. But I mean, that's one thing to know. Do you want to talk, just to reiterate what has been said, what you guys do to help schools be safe and so on?
Sure, and there is a Porter County Safe School Commission or committee that meets monthly, and I've been all around the state, and so I would like to say, not just because I live in Porter County, but that committee, I think, is far above any other one I've seen around the state, and I've seen a lot of them. Sheriff Reynolds, with his leadership, there's the schools that are involved, police, fire, but then there's even the private schools that are in this group, and a lot of other people, SROs from the schools and different things, though, that come together in order to solve problems and talk about what would we do in different situations, or how could we prepare for those. And again, the one county, one protocol. So before Sheriff Reynolds introduced that, each school or each area did it, differently. And, the thought process came out that, hey, we need to do it the same way or almost the same. Obviously, any individual school or entity has a little bit different situation because of the geography and different people, but can we respond in a like manner from both police and fire side, but also internally from that school side, as an example? And so we've really accomplished in Porter County what a lot of people I heard say could never be done, in getting everybody, or at least almost under one umbrella, on how are we going to respond to these things. So that has been an enormous accomplishment. But then this group continues to meet and talk about, how would the police get in the school if something happened, and making sure that all police within that county can get into any school. So can the Valpo police get into, a school outside of Valpo? Because if something happens, they're all going to come. And so we're going to have a lot of police or fire people arriving, and maybe it's access controlled. So we talked about trying to keep people out of, say, a school. While we're doing that, we have to think about, okay, we may be keeping out the good guys that we want in there to help us. So how do we make sure they can get in? And so all these things get discussed in those meetings, and really work through a lot of stuff. So a lot of it is planning, talking about what could happen without being paranoid, but then identifying issues and then fixing them. And Sheriff Reynolds, and we actually, Porter County EMA ran a large tabletop exercise a year ago, and we had the schools, police, fire, EMS, some private organizations involved, and we presented a scenario to expose weaknesses and things we needed to get better at. And then, again, those committee meetings came about and said, hey, here's the things we identified. How do we fix those? How do we make it better? And so out of that tabletop, a lot of things got fixed. And again, so that's just one example, but there's live exercises, there's maybe tabletops with other scenarios, but continually looking at things and making them better. And then after after the low-hanging fruit's gone, now you start uncovering other things that you can do better.
Right.
But never, obviously you want to celebrate your success and not second guess yourself, but don't ever be completely satisfied. Let's always look to go to the next
You
level.
don't want to be complacent.
So-
One thing that we've had with Dave Reynolds and now you discuss is the important partnership between the schools and the county and the local police departments, so that everyone has that understanding. What do you do? What do we do? because that is so important in an emergency crisis situation. One of the things that, when you said keeping the good guys out, Dave talked about the fob system now, where,
Yes.
and I know he's working on that to make sure all the emergency responders have a fob to get into those schools, because you don't know what's happening inside. That person that normally buzzes them in may not be able to buzz
Exactly.
them in. So thoughts like that, as you guys meet, those things come up and they're being discussed and addressed, which is good. That's reassuring to know, and that's because we all want to keep the kids safe, and they should get to a point where they're there to be educated, and they don't have to worry because the adults are doing what they need to do to keep them safe.
Yeah.
So thank you for your efforts in that. And I know
Absolutely.
with your years, and again, I don't want to minimize this by any means, but between you and Mike Brickner, there's like 60-some years experience.
That's
I don't
not
want
to
to
say
bring up
we're
your
old,
age. Well, hey, pal, look, hey, look at the gray hair, you know what I'm saying? No, but I'm talking about the experience. So people should understand there's a lot of experience at that. And Dave Reynolds himself, oh my gosh, there's years of law enforcement and safety there. So go ahead.
Yeah, no, I was just gonna say, I mean, you're absolutely right. It's what you said is so important, the partnerships, because you can't go out as one entity. I couldn't go out as Porter County Emergency Management and do it all myself. It's getting the school, the police, and everybody together to talk, because we all have something to contribute and concerns. And so what I may fix on my end may not help them, or I may complicate it on their end. So that partnership is so important. And as you said, the talented people, Sheriff Reynolds, Mike Brickner, and there's a lot of other people out
yeah.
there that,
Oh, yeah.
I'm here talking on the radio, but my philosophy is surround yourself with people that are a lot smarter than you. And so there's a lot of people out there that are around me that are a lot smarter than me that make me look good. And that's the important thing, is doing
Right.
that.
It requires a team, making sure, and
is.
that's where the partnership, and it's just not with the schools, but like these manufacturing facilities, making sure that they're safe and
Yeah.
going in. And I know that they could contact the county if
Sure.
someone's building a new facility or buying a facility, and say, hey, can you stop by and make sure that we're doing everything right? That helps. So if you're out there and have a company and haven't done that, by all means contact Lance and say, hey, can you stop by and make sure we're doing things right, and so you want to again let them know how they can contact you.
Yeah, I mean, they can call Porter County Emergency Management, or even just send an email, lance.bella@porterco.org, if you want to get in touch. But what we just talked about with the schools, it's the same partnership with private industry and everybody in the community. So that's just a really good example of how we've been successful. But that same model would apply to any situation that you were talking about, Bill, that it's not just the schools, it's private industry and all the players in the county, because it's about the citizens of Porter County. That's the important thing, and that's the mission, and getting it out there and all of us working together. And again, we talked earlier, there's a lot of people behind the scenes in our agency, talking about people that are a lot smarter than me, our volunteers. There's a lot of talent there. And they make me look good. So.
And they have the MAC now, which is Task Force Tips. Thank you, Task Force Tips, and Stu McMillan for providing that great resource for the
great.
county, because
Yes.
that is, I mean, nationally there are not facilities like that. So that provides a place for you all to set up situations and
It
make
is.
sure. So it's an excellent
Gold mine of training.
Yes.
It really is.
It is. So right here in Porter County, we are kind of a beacon of light for other counties in the state to follow, and they're noting that, and calling the folks and saying, I know the MAC facilities used, the people from all over the state and in the tri-state region are coming to use that facility. So as we start closing out the show, are there any, one thing I think would be important, because gosh, if there's someone sitting out there and saying, I want to volunteer, what can I do? Can you explain again how they go about contacting you, and do they need to, I assume they have to go through the usual process like an employee. But
Yeah, they would get a hold of us, and basically what they do is we would talk to them, find out what their intentions would be or what their view is, talk to them about what we do, because again, it's not always glamorous, and so making sure people understand that. Typically what we'd have them do is then come to a couple of our monthly meetings, see if they think it's something that they would like to do. And then also both ways, making sure it's a good fit. After that, if they think that this is something I'd like to do, then they would apply. And then there's background checks that have to happen. We look at training and then try to get them into whatever, training we need. And it's a process. It's not something that's going to happen in a week. They're going to be all trained up. It may take a year of them doing different trainings to get up to speed to where they need to go. But again, making sure that it's truly something that they are getting something out of, and at the same time as helping our agency. But we want to develop them as people as well, and building leaders for the community. So making sure that there's that good fit, and then moving forward from there. So they can always contact us, and again, then if it's something they want to do, we can get them into the process. So.
Now, I assume also, like, if someone's sitting out there with some equipment, I don't know what that would be, maybe a truck that they're looking at getting a new model and it's still pretty decent shape. Do you accept those type of donations?
And that's a good point. You brought up task force tips. Some years ago, they donated to us a very nice pickup truck, as well as a trailer that it pulled, that they used to use for showing their equipment. And they donated that to Porter County Emergency Management. So that truck and that trailer are in service to help the county. So yeah, if somebody has something out there that they'd like to try to donate, they can contact us and we'll look. We have to be careful there, because sometimes people want to donate. We don't want to take something that won't be used, is what I want to say.
You don't want to become a storage facility for auction.
Right.
So.
And we want to truly make sure we're using it, because if not, somebody else may be able to use it.
Right.
We don't want to take something that we wouldn't be able to use. So we'll vet through that with them.
Yeah. So with that, I think we're going to start closing out the show. Lance, again,
Thanks for
thank
having
you
me.
that by all means, thank you for coming on. We always appreciate it when you're here. So if you will, just again reiterate where they can contact you, and then we'll close out the show.
Sure, they can call the office, or they can contact me via email at lance.bella, B as in boy, ELLA @porterco.org.
With that, thanks again, Lance, and we wish you a safe week and weekend, and keep us safe.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Thank you.
You have been listening to The Bill and Callie Show on WVLP LP 103.1 FM and streaming live at WVLP.org or on your TuneIn app. Broadcast live from the historic 1 Center Street building in beautiful Valparaiso, Indiana. The Bill and Callie Show is underwritten by Bill Moran and Callie Rosala. This show will be rebroadcast on Saturday at 6 p.m. on WVLP. The Bill and Callie Show podcast is available on iTunes and YouTube. Have a wonderful week. Bye for now.